I am an African American, and I know exactly what Meghan's children would look like. The children and her.
What if the monarchy you thought was unshakable was built on a lie? That's not a fairy tale opening. That's the chilling question that exploded when Lady Colin Campbell, better known as Lady C, stepped into the conversation about Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and their children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. For years, whispers have floated through the air like smoke from a fire no one wanted to admit existed. Whispers about pregnancy bumps, hidden hospital rooms, and children who may never have been carried by Meghan at all. Most dismissed these rumors as cruel gossip. But then came Lady C, with her thunderous voice, her unapologetic tone, and her claim that she has documents. Not words, not rumors, documents. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. So let me ask you, what would happen if those documents really exist? What if the line of succession to the British throne, the centuries-old chain that stretches back through blood and tradition, was hanging by a thread woven of lies? And what if King Charles himself was now being forced to make a decision that could tear apart his family, and possibly the monarchy, forever? This isn't just about Harry and Meghan. It's about the children. Two innocent children at the heart of a storm they never asked for. And yet, their very identities could decide who sits on the throne. You see, royal succession isn't just about titles and crowns. It's about legitimacy, direct birth. The bloodline must not only exist, it must be provable. And this is where the alleged surrogacy bombshell comes in. If Meghan did not carry Archie and Lilibet, if they were born via surrogates, then the tradition, the very rules of royal succession, dictate that they may not have a claim at all. Think about that. Not just a family scandal, a constitutional crisis. But why now?
The children and her child would be what we call a halfican. I never heard of that one before. And would look nothing like.
Why has Lady C chosen this moment to reveal what she claims to know? Timing in royal scandals is never random. Every leak, every whisper, every carefully chosen word is part of a larger chess game being played out behind the palace gates. Is Lady C acting alone, or is she a voice for forces inside the monarchy desperate to preserve the crown at any cost? And here's the real sting. If she's right, then King Charles isn't just weighing the future of two children. He's weighing the survival of the monarchy itself. Now, let's take a step back. Remember the carefully choreographed way Meghan's pregnancies were presented to the public? The subtle photo ops, the staged appearances, the endless speculation about the bump? At times, it looked exaggerated. At other times, it looked too small, too low, too strange. The internet caught on quickly. Memes spread like wildfire. Was Meghan wearing a prosthetic bump? Was she hiding something? Each time she bent down, each time the bump seemed to fold unnaturally, the rumors grew louder. And yet the palace stayed silent. Silent in a way that only added fuel to the fire. Think about that silence. The royal family has fought back against gossip before. They've issued statements, clarified rumors, even gone to court. But with Meghan and the pregnancies? Nothing. Just silence. Why? Was it because there was nothing to defend, or because defending it would only expose more questions?
Any of those children. I know hundreds, and skin tone and hair will tell the true story. She used a.
And then Archie was born. No pictures from the hospital. No traditional photo on the steps, as had been the practice for royal births for decades. Instead, secrecy, mystery, a couple of carefully staged images released later. The press and public were left to speculate. Where was he really born? Was Meghan ever in that delivery room? Fast forward to Lilibet Diana. The mystery deepened. Born in California, away from the eyes of the British press, away from centuries of tradition. Once again, limited access. Once again, carefully managed imagery. And once again, whispers. Now, here's where Lady C enters like a storm. She doesn't just nod to the rumors. She doesn't just entertain gossip. She claims to have seen paperwork, contracts, documents that, if real, could blow apart everything. And she's not saying this lightly. Lady C knows the weight of her words. She's written about royals before, often stirring controversy, often dividing opinion. But this time, her claim cuts to the core of the monarchy itself.
Surrogate. sorry, did a deep dive and she couldn't bear children.
Ask yourself, why would someone like Lady C risk her reputation on a claim so incendiary? What does she stand to gain if it's untrue? More importantly, what does she stand to lose if it's proven false? Because make no mistake, the monarchy may tolerate gossip, but it will not tolerate exposure that strikes at its heart. And yet here we are, a monarchy under strain, a public losing faith, a family fractured beyond recognition. And now, two children whose very existence in the line of succession may not be legitimate. But pause for a moment. Imagine being King Charles. On one hand, a father and grandfather. On the other, the King of England, sworn to protect the crown and uphold its traditions. How does a man split himself in two? Can he look at his grandchildren as family while knowing that, by the rules of the very throne he sits upon, they may have no rightful claim? That's the impossible dilemma. And that's why this story matters now. Because succession isn't just a line on a family tree. It's the foundation of the monarchy. And foundations can crumble. What Lady C has ignited is not just gossip fodder. It's not just another headline. It's a direct challenge to the monarchy's survival in the 21st century. And in a world where tradition is already under fire, where the crown must fight to remain relevant, the possibility that Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogates could be the crack that shatters the glass. So where do we go from here? How deep do these claims run? And if the documents are real, why hasn't the palace acted yet? Could it be that the monarchy is desperately trying to buy time, to manage the fallout, to prepare the public for what's coming? Or could it be that Lady C is playing a dangerous game, one where the truth may destroy not just Harry and Meghan, but the crown itself? Let me put it to you directly. If tomorrow the palace confirmed that Archie and Lilibet were not born of Meghan, what would happen? Would the world turn on Harry and Meghan? Would the monarchy rise stronger, or would it collapse under the weight of its own hypocrisy? And perhaps the hardest question of all, what does it mean for two innocent children who never chose any of this? That's the real tragedy here. Behind the headlines, behind the rumors, behind the scandals, there are two children. Children who may grow up knowing that their very identities are questioned, dissected, and used as weapons in the war over the crown. But as dramatic as this introduction is, it's only the beginning. Because once you peel back the first layer, the story doesn't get clearer, it gets darker. Much darker. And the deeper we go, the more dangerous the truth becomes. Because the question isn't just whether Lady C is right. The question is, what happens if she is? And that's where we head next. Into the life of Lady C herself, into her reputation, her history, and the reason her words matter now more than ever. Because the monarchy has survived wars, betrayals, abdications, and scandals. But what it may not survive is the truth about its heirs. Why does Lady Colin Campbell's voice echo louder than 1,000 tabloid headlines? That's the question that hangs heavy when you hear her name whispered in the same breath as scandal. Lady C, as she is often called, isn't just another royal commentator. She's a woman who has lived close enough to the fire to smell the smoke, and more than once, she's been the one striking the match. When she speaks, people listen, some with shock, others with suspicion, but almost no one with indifference. And now, with her claims about Archie and Lilibet, she has once again shoved herself into the eye of the storm. But why her? Why now? And why do her words sting in a way that others don't? To understand the gravity of her revelations, you need to know who Lady C is, and what makes her both one of the most controversial and compelling figures in the royal world. Lady Colin Campbell was not born into nobility. She clawed her way into that world, marrying briefly into the aristocracy, and never letting go of the connections that followed. Her marriage to Lord Colin Campbell lasted just over a year, but it left her with a name and a position that she leveraged with a ferocity most would never dare. Many dismissed her as eccentric, outrageous, even bitter, but that never stopped her. If anything, it fueled her. She became a writer, and not just any writer, an author of royal biographies that shocked, scandalized, and sent ripples through Buckingham Palace. Do you remember when Princess Diana was still alive, when her image was carefully polished, fragile yet perfect? Lady C was one of the first to strip away the veil. Her book, Diana in Private, revealed things the palace desperately wanted hidden: affairs, struggles, secrets. People gasped. Some called her a liar. But years later, many of her claims were proven true. That's the power of Lady C. She may exaggerate, she may dramatize, but often, terrifyingly often, she is right. So let me ask you this. When someone with that kind of track record says she has documents proving Meghan never carried her children, do we dismiss her as sensational, or do we pay attention? The middle ground is dangerous. Ignore her and risk missing the truth. Believe her blindly and risk being manipulated. But either way, she commands attention. And she thrives on that attention. Lady C isn't a soft-spoken whisperer. She's a thunderclap in a quiet room. Her voice, her mannerisms, her flair for the dramatic, it all keeps people glued. She knows how to create anticipation, how to hold a pause, how to look into the camera and make you feel like she's telling you something forbidden. Isn't that exactly what keeps you watching right now? But with all her charisma comes controversy. She's been accused of exaggeration, of peddling half-truths, of stirring chaos for her own gain. Her critics are relentless, dismissing her as irrelevant or opportunistic. And yet, when the dust settles, she's still there, standing tall, daring anyone to prove her wrong. Here's the contradiction that makes her so compelling. She is both reviled and respected, dismissed and feared. The palace will never acknowledge her openly, yet it cannot ignore her influence. Journalists roll their eyes, but they report on her words anyway. Viewers scoff, but they keep watching. And somewhere in that paradox lies her power. So why does her voice matter now, in the saga of Harry, Meghan, and their children? Because Lady C isn't just feeding into idle gossip. She's tying it to the monarchy's deepest vulnerability, succession. She's not whispering about fashion faux pas or petty family drama. She's making a direct assault on legitimacy. And when legitimacy crumbles, monarchy collapses. Think about it this way. If a neighbor gossips about your family, you shrug it off. But if a lawyer waves documents that question your inheritance, suddenly it's not gossip anymore. It's a threat. That's what Lady C represents to the royals. A threat wrapped in controversy, speaking truths that might be lies, or lies that might be truths. And the palace cannot afford to gamble on which one it is. Now let's talk about the timing. Why now? Lady C has been around for decades. She's seen scandals come and go. She could have raised this issue years ago when Meghan's pregnancies were first under scrutiny. But she waited. And here's the thing. Timing in the royal world is never accidental. Look at the monarchy's current state. King Charles is on the throne. His reign's still fragile, still unsteady. The public is divided, trust is wavering, and Harry and Meghan have carved themselves a controversial position in America. Every move they make ripples back to Britain. Every scandal adds weight to Charles's already heavy crown. And right in the middle of this instability, Lady C drops her bombshell. Coincidence? Or strategy? Maybe she believes the monarchy is at a crossroads and feels compelled to reveal the truth now, before it's too late. Or maybe, and this is the darker possibility, she knows the monarchy is vulnerable, and her revelations will guarantee her maximum impact. Which one do you believe? It's also worth remembering that Lady C thrives on shock. She doesn't whisper her claims in hidden corners. She shouts them, publicly, unapologetically. And yet, when she does, she often has just enough credibility to make you pause. She's not just a random blogger. She's someone with access, with connections, with a past of getting it right. And that's what makes this different. The monarchy knows this too. Behind closed doors, they may pretend she doesn't matter. But history shows otherwise. When Lady C speaks, reporters follow. When reporters follow, the public listens. And once the public listens, silence from the palace begins to sound like guilt. Do you see the trap here? Lady C doesn't even need to be right to create damage. All she has to do is plant the question. The question grows, spreads, and soon the monarchy is defending itself against shadows. That's her real power. She doesn't just expose, she destabilizes. And in this case, the destabilization could be catastrophic. If the public begins to believe that Archie and Lilibet were not carried by Meghan, the monarchy faces a nightmare scenario. On one side, anger from loyalists who feel deceived. On the other, sympathy for Harry and Meghan's children, who never asked for this scrutiny. Either way, trust in the institution crumbles. So here we are, staring down Lady C's latest storm. A woman many love to hate, many hate to love, but almost no one can ignore. And she's not simply throwing words into the wind. She's claiming to hold proof. That's not just gossip, it's dynamite. But here's the twist, the contradiction that keeps you hooked. Is Lady C the brave, truth-teller daring to reveal what others won't? Or is she the master manipulator, weaving stories that feed our hunger for scandal? Maybe she's both. Maybe that's what makes her dangerous. And now, with her reputation set, her timing chosen, and her words cutting through the fog, we arrive at the heart of the storm. The alleged documents. The papers she claims to have seen. The proof that could rewrite royal history. So the question now isn't whether Lady C is credible. The question is, what do those documents really say? Because if she's telling the truth, then the monarchy may already be standing on broken ground. What could possibly be written on a piece of paper that sends Buckingham Palace in a silent panic? That's the power Lady C claims to hold in her hands. Not whispers, not speculation, not cleverly edited headlines. She says she has documents, hard evidence, proof that Meghan Markle never carried Archie Harrison or Lilibet Diana. And if that's true, then we're not talking about gossip anymore. We're talking about the very foundations of royal legitimacy being shaken apart by ink and signatures. But what kind of documents could these be? Some say contracts. Others whisper about sealed hospital records. Even more claim there are confidential agreements between Meghan, Harry, and unnamed medical institutions in the United States. Think about it. Surrogacy arrangements often involve legal paperwork, financial transactions, and medical authorizations. If Lady C truly has access to something like that, then it means this isn't just rumor. It's recorded. It's legal. It's binding. And most terrifying of all, it's undeniable. Let's pause for a second. Imagine what such a document might contain. A surrogate's name, dates of medical procedures, payment details, confidentiality clauses, maybe even signatures from Harry and Meghan themselves. Now picture that leaking into the public eye. Do you think the monarchy could survive the fallout? Could the king allow heirs to remain in the line of succession when their births would break centuries of tradition? Or would he be forced, against his own heart, to erase them from the future of the crown? And here's where it gets darker. Documents like these don't just materialize in public. If Lady C claims to have seen them, then someone, somewhere, wanted her to see them. That means there's a leak, a deliberate act, a shadowy hand pulling strings behind the scenes. So who? Who would benefit from putting these documents in Lady C's path? Think about the players. Could it be insiders from the palace itself, desperate to protect the institution even if it means destroying Harry and Meghan? Could it be disgruntled staff, tired of secrets and lies? Or maybe it's someone close to Meghan, someone betrayed or cast aside, who wants revenge. The possibilities are endless, but they all point to one chilling reality. If Lady C truly has these papers, then someone in the inner circle of power wanted this truth, or this weapon, to explode. And if it's a weapon, then it's not just aimed at Harry and Meghan. It's aimed at the monarchy as a whole. Now, ask yourself this. Why would Meghan and Harry, who constantly speak about authenticity, transparency, and breaking free from royal control, choose to hide something so explosive? If they use surrogates, why not simply admit it? In today's world, surrogacy is not shameful. Celebrities across the globe have chosen it openly. So why cloak it in secrecy? Here's the contradiction. If Meghan truly used surrogates, admitting it could have won her sympathy. It could have painted her as a modern mother, breaking barriers, defying outdated royal traditions. But she didn't. She staged appearances, flaunted baby bumps, and sold the image of a mother carrying her children herself. Why? Was it to protect the children's place in the line of succession? Was it to protect her image as the new Diana, the glowing royal mother? Or was it simply about control? Controlling the story, controlling the optics, controlling the world's perception of her motherhood? And that control, if these documents exist, has now slipped from her grasp. But let's not forget Harry. If Lady C's claim is true, then Harry signed off on this deception as well. And that makes it even more tragic. Harry, the boy who grew up distrusting the press, scarred by the lies told about his mother, now accused of weaving his own web of deception. How does that sit with you? A man who claims to crave truth, to protect his family at all costs, allegedly helping to hide the most fundamental truth of all, the birth of his own children. Let's consider another angle. What if these documents are not about medical procedures, but about secrecy, non-disclosure agreements, Confidentiality contracts, papers signed by hospital staff, doctors, or even friends who were sworn to silence. Imagine a nurse who knows the truth but is legally bound never to speak. Imagine aides paid off to look the other way. Those documents, too, could be damning. Not because they show a surrogate's name, but because they prove a cover-up. And that's often more dangerous than the act itself. History tells us again and again, it's not the scandal that kills reputations, it's the cover-up. If the monarchy, or even Harry and Meghan alone, went to great lengths to conceal this, then the scandal multiplies. Because now, it's not just about how Archie and Lilibet were born. It's about how far the royals were willing to go to deceive the public. Let me put it directly to you. If tomorrow a document surfaced proving surrogacy, would you be shocked? Or would you feel V? Because that's the terrifying part. For years, people have doubted, joked, speculated. If a document confirms it, then all those whispers suddenly transform into truth. And when whispers become truth, trust collapses. But wait, here's another contradiction you can't ignore. Documents can be forged, signatures faked, pages fabricated. Could Lady C have been given false evidence, planted to discredit her? Could she be walking into a trap, one that ultimately shields Meghan and Harry by painting her as unreliable once more? If that's the case, then the monarchy isn't the one under attack, it's Lady C herself. And if she falls, the scandal collapses with her. So we are left in limbo. Are these documents real or fake? Damning or fabricated? The palace won't confirm. Harry and Meghan won't speak. Lady C won't back down. And in the silence, speculation grows louder than any truth. But here's the detail that sticks like a thorn. Lady C didn't just wave her hands and say, "I've heard rumors." She used the word documents. That one word changes everything. Because gossip can be denied. Opinions can be dismissed. But documents? They demand inspection. They demand answers. They demand truth. And yet, truth is the one thing the palace has refused to give. So now we wait. For a leak. For an exposure. For a revelation that either proves Lady C right or destroys her credibility forever. Either way, someone will fall. The only question is who. But what happens if these papers do reach the light of day? What happens when surrogacy shifts from speculation to proof? That's where the real storm begins. Because the public's reaction will not be uniform. It will be split. Some will stand with Harry and Meghan, defending their right to privacy, praising them for protecting their children. Others will rage at the deception, demanding accountability, screaming for the removal of Archie and Lilibet from the line of succession. And in the middle of that storm, King Charles will have to make the hardest choice of his reign. Will he protect his grandchildren? Or will he protect the crown? That is the question looming over the monarchy tonight. But the documents themselves, whatever they contain, are only the first ripple. Because once those ripples spread, they reach into deeper waters. They stir up something older, something more sinister, something that has haunted Meghan and Harry since day one. The rumors, the whispers, the speculation that never truly died. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Because if the documents are the spark, then the rumors are the fire. And once that fire reignites, it won't just scorch Harry and Meghan. It could burn the entire monarchy to the ground. Why do some rumors refuse to die, no matter how many times they're dismissed? That's the haunting question surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancies. From the very beginning, whispers followed her. Whispers that grew louder with every public appearance, every photo op, every step she took with her carefully cradled bump. For most royals, pregnancy is a celebration. For Meghan, it became a battlefield of speculation. And now, years later, those old suspicions are rising again, stronger than ever, fueled by Lady C's explosive claims of documents proving surrogacy. But let's rewind. Let's go back to the beginning. When Meghan first announced she was expecting Archie, the reaction was immediate and divided. Supporters cheered, celebrating the arrival of a mixed-race child into the royal family as a historic moment. Critics, however, were skeptical. They pointed out oddities in Meghan's public appearances. The size of the bump seemed to fluctuate. One day it looked small, the next day disproportionately large. At one event, when Meghan bent down, cameras appeared to capture the bump folding unnaturally, as if it were a prop. The footage spread like wildfire. Theories ignited. Was Meghan wearing a moon bump? Think about that. How often does the world accuse a royal of faking pregnancy? Almost never. Yet with Meghan, it became a conversation that refused to vanish. And what did the palace do to silence it? Nothing. Not a word. Not a single statement defending Meghan. Not a single clarification about the rumors. Silence. And in that silence, suspicion grew. And then there was the secrecy surrounding Archie's birth. Tradition dictates that royal births are public in their own way. Not the birth itself, of course, but the announcement, the photographs, the image of the proud parents standing on the hospital steps, sharing their joy with the world. We saw it with Diana. We saw it with Kate. It's part of the royal bargain. Privacy most of the time, but tradition in key moments. But with Meghan, that tradition shattered. There were no photos from the hospital steps. No glimpse of Meghan leaving after delivery. Instead, vague statements, carefully staged photographs, and an announcement that raised more questions than it answered. The palace said Meghan went into labor in one place, but later it was revealed Archie may have been born somewhere entirely different. Confusion, contradictions, inconsistencies. Ask yourself this. If the palace wanted to end the rumors, wouldn't they have given the public a clear, simple account of events? A photo of Meghan leaving the hospital with Archie would have silenced speculation instantly. But they didn't. And because they didn't, the speculation grew into wildfire. Now, let's fast forward to Lilibet Diana. By then, Harry and Meghan had stepped back from royal duties and relocated to California. You might think the move would grant them peace, away from the British tabloids. But instead, it added fuel to the fire. Lilibet's birth was even more mysterious than Archie's. No British press, no tradition, no transparency. Only carefully crafted press releases and the couple's own words. And the photos? Carefully staged, released on their own terms, polished to perfection. Once again, people began to wonder, what are they hiding? If Meghan had truly carried Lilibet, why not show at least one candid hospital image? Why not do something, anything, to prove the skeptics wrong? But once again, silence. And silence, in the royal world, is rarely neutral. It breeds speculation. It invites theories. It opens the door to endless interpretations. But here's the contradiction that makes this so fascinating. In the modern world, surrogacy is not scandalous. Many celebrities choose it openly. Kim Kardashian, Priyanka Chopra, countless others. Society has largely accepted it. So why, if Meghan did use surrogates, didn't she just admit it? Why create an elaborate charade of bumps and secrecy? Why open the door to ridicule, mockery, and conspiracy theories? The answer, some believe, lies in the monarchy itself. Tradition demands a direct birth for succession. And Meghan knew this. Harry knew this. The palace knew this. If the truth of surrogacy had come out, the children's places in the line of succession would have been in jeopardy. So, according to these whispers, they staged the pregnancies. They presented an image of Meghan carrying the children herself, protecting not just their privacy, but their royal legitimacy. It's a theory that makes sense, and yet, it's a theory that opens the monarchy to its greatest vulnerability. Because if it's ever proven true, then the deception wasn't just personal. It was constitutional. But let's dig deeper. The rumors didn't just come from faceless internet trolls. They came from body language experts, from journalists, from people who noticed inconsistencies. Meghan's hands on her bump, her habit of cradling it in almost every photo. Some saw it as maternal pride. Others saw it as performance. Do you remember the infamous baby shower in New York? Extravagant, lavish, unlike anything seen before from a royal mother-to-be. To some, it was simply Meghan being Meghan, glamorous, Hollywood, unapologetic. To others, it was a distraction, a performance to convince the world she was indeed pregnant. Once again, contradiction. Once again, suspicion. And then there were whispers of medical staff silenced by confidentiality agreements. Allegations that nurses and doctors knew the truth, but were bound legally never to speak. Could that explain why no one from the hospital proudly stepped forward, as often happens with royal births, to share their joy at delivering a future heir? Ask yourself, have you ever noticed how many small details are missing from the narratives of Archie and Lilibet's births? With William and Kate, we know the hospitals. We know the doctors. We saw the photos. With Meghan, gaps, holes, questions without answers. And in those gaps, the rumors have lived, thrived, and now, thanks to Lady C, returned with a vengeance. The tragedy is this. Rumors don't need to be true to be destructive. They just need to exist. And once they exist, they cast shadows that no amount of sunlight can erase. Meghan has spent years trying to fight the press, trying to craft her image, trying to control the story. But the rumors about her pregnancies have followed her relentlessly, like a shadow she cannot escape. And now, Lady C has poured gasoline on the embers. By claiming she has documents, she has given new life to old whispers. She has transformed rumor into something that feels closer to truth. And whether or not the documents are ever revealed, the damage is done. The questions have been reignited. The fire has been stoked. But here's where things get even more dangerous. Rumors are one thing. Laws are another. And in the monarchy, it's not the whispers that decide succession, it's the rules. The cold, unyielding rules that have guided the crown for centuries. And if those rules collide with these rumors, with these alleged documents, then King Charles will be faced with a decision no monarch has ever wanted to make. Because this is where gossip transforms into law. And once law enters the picture, the monarchy can no longer stay silent. Which means, as explosive as the rumors are, the storm ahead will be far more brutal. What does it really take to be royal? Blood, law, or image? That question isn't just philosophical. It's at the very heart of the monarchy itself. And when it comes to Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, that question could decide whether they remain in the line of succession or are erased from it forever. Let's strip away the glamour for a moment. Forget the crowns, the carriages, the waving hands on the palace balcony. At its core, the monarchy is a legal structure. It operates under rules, ancient, rigid, and designed to preserve legitimacy above all else. Those rules don't bend for emotion. They don't bend for sympathy. And they certainly don't bend for modern PR. Which means, if Lady C's claims are true, Archie and Lilibet may be in direct violation of centuries-old requirements. But what exactly are those rules? First, the principle of blood legitimacy. For a royal child to inherit succession rights, they must be born of the body of a lawful royal marriage. That phrase, born of the body, is crucial. It dates back centuries, long before concepts like surrogacy even existed. It means that the mother must physically carry and deliver the child. The idea was simple: no confusion, no deception, no outside interference. Bloodline and birth, provable and undeniable. That was the law. That was the safeguard. Now, think about this in today's context. Surrogacy has become a respected medical choice for many families worldwide. But the monarchy is not many families. It is bound to tradition, and tradition is merciless. If Meghan did not carry Archie and Lilibet, then by the letter of the royal law, they may not qualify as legitimate heirs. But here's the contradiction that burns like fire. The monarchy wants to appear modern, progressive, adaptable to the times. Charles himself has spoken about slimming down the monarchy, making it fit for the 21st century. Yet when it comes to succession, they are shackled to rules older than democracy itself. Can you imagine the irony? A monarchy desperate to survive in a modern world, but chained to laws that could destroy two innocent children's futures. Now let's talk about transparency. The rules of succession have always demanded clarity. Births of heirs were historically witnessed by officials, doctors, sometimes even political figures. Why? To prevent questions. To ensure no doubt lingered over who the child's parents really were. In the case of Archie and Lilibet, no such transparency existed. The secrecy, the contradictions, the refusal to follow tradition, it all runs directly against centuries of precedent. And that's why Lady C's claims are so dangerous, because they tap into a vacuum. The palace has not filled the silence with clarity, and so speculation now threatens to become reality. But what happens if the truth collides with the law? Imagine this scenario. Proof of surrogacy emerges. The monarchy cannot ignore it. King Charles faces the unimaginable. Either he bends the law, redefining legitimacy for the first time in history, or he enforces it, removing his own grandchildren from the line of succession. Which choice does he make? And which choice destroys him more? Ask yourself, what would you do in his position? Would you protect the crown, knowing that the monarchy itself might collapse if you're seen as a liar? Or would you protect your son, your grandchildren, your family, even if it means eroding the very foundations of the institution you swore to uphold? This is not an abstract question for Charles. It is his reality. He knows the laws. He knows the traditions. And he knows the cost of breaking them. Look at history. The monarchy has punished heirs for less. Illegitimate children, secret marriages, unsanctioned unions. They've all been excluded before. The rules have always been enforced. Why would this be different? But here's where it gets even more twisted. If Charles removes Archie and Lilibet, he risks confirming every suspicion the public has ever held about Meghan. He risks making Harry an even greater enemy. He risks tearing the family apart beyond repair. But if he keeps them in the line of succession, despite the rules, he risks something far greater: the legitimacy of the monarchy itself. Think about the future. Imagine William becoming king with doubts lingering over the line of succession. Imagine George, Charlotte, and Louis watching their cousins grow up in California, their legitimacy questioned by half the world. What kind of monarchy survives under that weight? Now, let's add another layer. The British public. They are the silent judges in this trial. The monarchy exists only because the people allow it to. If the public believes deception has taken place, trust will shatter. Polls already show declining support among younger generations. This scandal could accelerate that collapse. And then there's the Commonwealth. Nations around the world that still recognize the monarch as head of state. Countries already debating whether to cut ties could seize this as their final excuse. Why follow a crown that can't even follow its own rules? Do you see the domino effect here? One revelation, one enforcement of law, could lead to the unraveling of an empire's legacy. But perhaps the most tragic part is this. Archie and Lilibet had no choice in any of this. They didn't choose how they were born. They didn't choose secrecy. They didn't choose the stage their parents put them on. Yet their lives may be defined, limited, even destroyed by it. Innocent children, carrying the burden of centuries of tradition, trapped in a fight they never asked for. And here's where the contradiction slices deepest. The monarchy exists to preserve stability, yet its own rules, if enforced, could create the greatest instability of all. Protect the children and lose legitimacy. Protect the crown and lose the children. Either way, the monarchy loses. So ask yourself, what is the monarchy really protecting here? Its laws? Its bloodline? Its image? Or simply its survival at any cost? Because if survival is the goal, then we are watching an institution willing to sacrifice anything, even its own grandchildren. But survival doesn't come easy. And for King Charles, survival means making a choice no grandfather should ever face. And that choice, whispered behind palace walls, may already be closer than anyone realizes. What would you do if the fate of your grandchildren clashed with the survival of a 1,000-year-old crown? That's the impossible dilemma facing King Charles, a man who waited longer than any heir in history to finally wear the crown, a man who fought his own scandals, endured humiliation, and rebuilt his reputation enough to stand as sovereign. And now, just as the crown rests on his head, he faces a decision no monarch has ever wanted to make. Does he protect his son's children, or does he protect the monarchy itself? Let's not forget, Charles is not just a king. He is a father. He is a grandfather. And family, at least in theory, should come before duty. But the monarchy is not a family like yours or mine. It is an institution first, a family second. And Charles knows better than anyone what happens when personal loyalty clashes with royal duty. Think back to his own life. His marriage to Diana was not born of love, it was a duty. His lifelong love for Camilla was buried for decades under the weight of tradition. His every personal desire was weighed against what the crown demanded. He sacrificed his own happiness to serve the monarchy. And in doing so, he watched his family fracture, his wife die in tragedy, and his sons grow up in bitterness. Now, years later, that cycle threatens to repeat itself with Harry and Meghan's children. So how does a man who lost so much to royal duty balance that duty against his love for two young children? Does he bend the rules of succession to shield them, knowing it could destroy the monarchy's legitimacy? Or does he enforce those rules, even if it means erasing his grandchildren from the future of the crown? Let's put it plainly. Charles is damned if he does, and damned if he doesn't. But don't mistake him for weak. Charles may appear soft-spoken, even fragile at times, but behind the scenes he is shrewd, calculating. He has survived decades of scandal because he knows how to play the long game. And in this game, the stakes are higher than ever. Because make no mistake, Charles is not only weighing the future of Archie and Lilibet, he is weighing the survival of the monarchy itself. If the institution collapses under his watch, history will not forgive him. He will be remembered not as the king who modernized, but as the king who failed. And that fear of legacy, of failure, of history's judgment, weighs heavily on every decision he makes. So what does he do? Behind palace walls, whispers suggest Charles has already begun laying the groundwork for difficult choices. This slimmed-down monarchy he often speaks about, some believe it's not just about saving money or modernizing. Some believe it's about preparing the public for fewer royals in the line of succession. A subtle, careful reshaping of the future that, if the time comes, could quietly exclude Archie and Lilibet without ever saying their names. But can he really do it quietly? Can he erase two children from history without igniting outrage across the world? Here's where the contradiction lies. Charles is a grandfather. He has reportedly met Lilibet only briefly, seen Archie rarely. By all accounts, his relationship with Harry's children is distant, fractured by geography and bitterness. But blood is blood, and even if he is not close to them, they are still his grandchildren. History. Imagine the emotional toll. Imagine looking into the eyes of your grandchildren, knowing that by enforcing the law, you are condemning them to a lifetime of exile from the crown that is their birthright, or at least, the birthright they were told was theirs. How does a man live with that? And yet, imagine the alternative. Imagine doing nothing. Imagine allowing the rumors to fester, the questions to grow louder, the legitimacy of the monarchy to crumble piece by piece. Charles has seen what happens when scandal goes unanswered. He lived it during the Diana years. He knows silence is not protection, it is poison. So again, he is trapped. Protect the children, and the crown weakens. Protect the crown, and the children suffer. And either way, the world judges him. But maybe, just maybe, Charles has another card to play. Some insiders whisper that he could use this scandal as leverage, not to erase the children outright, but to tighten control over Harry and Meghan. To make it clear, stay in line, play by the rules, or the truth will come out and your children will lose everything. A brutal strategy, yes, but in the world of monarchy, leverage is everything. And this raises a darker question. Does Charles love his grandchildren enough to protect them, or only enough to use them? That's the cruel irony of monarchy. Family becomes politics, love becomes leverage, and children become pawns in a game they never chose to play. Think about Harry in all this. A son who already feels betrayed by his father. A man who walked away from the monarchy because he wanted to protect his wife and children. How will he react if Charles threatens to erase Archie and Lilibet? Will he fight back? Will he expose the family secrets he has held back until now? Or will he break completely, severing ties with the monarchy forever? And Meghan, how will she react? A woman already painted as the villain by many in Britain. A woman who has fought tirelessly to control her image, to command the narrative. Will she allow the monarchy to strip her children's future? Or will she launch an all-out war to protect them? Because if Charles chooses the crown over his grandchildren, Meghan will not stay silent. She will fight back with every weapon she has. Interviews, memoirs, documentaries, perhaps even more shocking revelations about the royal family. The battle would not end with Charles's decision. It would only begin. And here's the part no one wants to admit. Charles may already know his decision. He may already have chosen the crown over his grandchildren. The slimmed-down monarchy, the silence around Archie and Lilibet, the careful positioning of William, Catherine, and their children, it all points in one direction. A monarchy preparing for a future where Harry's children simply don't count. But if that's true, then the question isn't what Charles will do. The question is when. When will the truth be revealed? When will the line of succession be altered? And how will the world react when it finally happens? Because the day Charles makes that decision public will not be the end of the story. It will be the beginning of a new war inside the House of Windsor. And that war, between father and son, crown and family, truth and deception, will be bloodier than any scandal the monarchy has ever faced. What happens when a prince who once embodied loyalty, honor, and duty finds himself cornered, desperate, and fighting to hold on to the only thing that still gives his life meaning? His children. That's where Prince Harry now stands. A man torn apart by choices, haunted by contradictions, and increasingly desperate as the walls close in around him. For all the headlines about Meghan, for all the stories about their Hollywood lifestyle, the Netflix deals, and the public feuds, one truth remains constant. Harry is a father. And in his eyes, Archie and Lilibet are not just his children. They are his legacy, his redemption, the proof that he can build a life away from the palace that once suffocated him. But here's the contradiction that makes Harry's story so tragic. In fighting to protect his children, he may be the one who has endangered them most. Think about it. Harry left the monarchy, claiming he wanted to shield his family from the same trauma that destroyed his mother. He wanted freedom, privacy, control over his own story. Yet what has happened? By stepping away, he has turned Archie and Lilibet into the most controversial children in royal history. Their legitimacy questioned, their identities debated, their very futures hanging in the balance of secrets their parents chose to keep. So let's ask the question directly. What is Harry hiding? If Meghan truly carried those children, why not put the rumors to rest once and for all? Why not offer proof, silence the whispers, and protect their place in the line of succession? Harry, of all people, knows what it means to live under suspicion, to have your legitimacy questioned. He knows the pain of growing up under headlines about his real father. Why, then, would he allow his own children to endure the same fate? Unless the truth is exactly what Lady C and others have suggested. Unless Harry knows the rumors are not rumors at all. Unless the documents Lady C claims to have seen are real, and Harry is living every day in fear that the truth will be exposed. Now imagine the desperation of that position. A man who walked away from the palace to build a better life, only to find that life now hanging by a thread. Every interview, every public appearance, every media project, overshadowed by whispers about surrogacy, secrecy, and succession. And make no mistake, Harry feels that pressure. His memoir, Spare, was filled with bitterness, raw confessions, and accusations against his family. But did you notice what it didn't contain? Any deep dive into Meghan's pregnancies. Any detail that might once and for all silence the speculation. The omission is telling. It's as if Harry knows this is the one subject he cannot touch, the one secret that cannot be revealed. But secrets have a way of eating a man alive. Look at Harry's behavior in recent years: angry outbursts, emotional interviews, tears on camera, rants about the press. Yes, some of that comes from trauma. Yes, some comes from resentment. But isn't it possible that much of it comes from fear? The fear of losing everything if the truth comes out? Now let's consider the palace's perspective. Harry's desperation makes him unpredictable. He could lash out at any moment, reveal secrets he has held back, attack the monarchy in ways that could damage it beyond repair. That makes him dangerous. And a desperate man with nothing to lose? That is the palace's worst nightmare. So what does Harry do? How does he fight back? He doubles down on love. He presents himself as the doting father, the protector, the man who walked away from privilege to shield his children. Every photo released of Archie and Lilibet is carefully curated to send that message. These are my children, my family, my world. He wants the world to see him not as a prince, not as a rebel, but as a father. But the irony is brutal. The harder he pushes that image, the louder the whispers become. Because every staged photo, every polished image, every calculated release reminds people of the secrecy that surrounds these children. And Meghan? She amplifies the narrative. Her interviews, her podcasts, her carefully chosen words all circle back to the same theme: motherhood. She presents herself as the loving, protective mother, shielding her children from a cruel and racist monarchy. To her supporters, it's powerful. To her critics, it's performance. And at the center of it all is Harry, trapped between the woman he loves and the crown he abandoned. Now let's imagine the scenario behind closed doors. Harry, late at night, sitting alone in California, his phone buzzing with calls from lawyers, advisors, maybe even palace insiders warning him of what's coming. The possibility that Lady C's claims will not just stay as whispers, but break into headlines worldwide. What does he feel in that moment? Rage? Fear? Regret? Does he ever wish he had stayed? That he had endured the palace, the press, the duty, just to avoid this nightmare? Or does he still believe he made the right choice, even as the cost grows heavier every day? Here's another angle to consider. Harry has often spoken about his mother, Princess Diana, and how she was hounded by the press, betrayed by the palace, and ultimately destroyed by both. In his mind, he is reliving her story through Meghan and his children. But there's a tragic twist. Diana was the victim of lies told about her. Harry may be the perpetrator of lies told by him, and that difference could define his legacy. But desperation doesn't only destroy, it also creates. Desperate people innovate. They strategize. They take risks no one else would dare. And Harry, backed into a corner, may yet launch the fight of his life. Maybe he's already preparing. Maybe the lawsuits, the interviews, the memoirs are just the opening shots in a war he plans to wage against anyone who questions his children. But here's the danger. Wars like these rarely end in victory. They end in casualties. And Harry may soon learn that the biggest casualties of his desperation are the very children he is trying to protect. So here we are again, staring at the same haunting question. What is Harry hiding? Is he protecting his children from lies, or protecting them with lies? And if it is the latter, then every tear he has shed, every speech he has made, every attack on the press and the monarchy may not be about defending truth at all. It may be about defending a secret so devastating it could erase Archie and Lilibet from royal history forever. But if Harry is desperate now, just wait. Because the person who could expose Meghan's silence and shatter his defenses is about to step into the story. And when she does, the storm will grow darker still. Why hasn't Meghan Markle spoken directly about the surrogacy claims? That silence, sharp, deliberate, unflinching, might be the most powerful weapon she has. And yet, paradoxically, it is also her greatest vulnerability. Because in the world of scandal and suspicion, silence is never neutral. It screams louder than words. It invites interpretation. It fuels questions that no carefully staged photo can ever silence. From the very beginning, Meghan has positioned herself as a woman of words. She gives interviews, writes essays, records podcasts, and pours her thoughts into carefully crafted speeches. She thrives on controlling narratives, shaping stories, and redefining herself in the public eye. And yet, when it comes to one of the most explosive allegations surrounding her, the idea that she never carried Archie and Lilibet, her lips have remained sealed. Why? Let's dig into the psychology of her silence. On one hand, it could be strategy. By refusing to acknowledge the claims, Meghan denies them legitimacy. She frames them as beneath her, too absurd to warrant a response. In her world, to answer the rumor would be to elevate it. Silence, in that sense, becomes strength. It becomes her way of saying, I don't owe you an explanation. But on the other hand, silence creates a vacuum, and vacuums always fill with noise. In this case, the noise of speculation, conspiracy, and relentless gossip. Every time Meghan refuses to address the rumors, critics seize on it as proof. If she really carried the children, they ask, why not just say so? And so the silence, which was meant to be strength, begins to look like fear. Now let's contrast Meghan's silence with her behavior in other controversies. When accused of bullying staff at Kensington Palace, she denied it through statements and interviews. When criticized for her fashion spending, she defended her choices through surrogates in the press. When painted as a manipulative outsider, she and Harry gave Oprah Winfrey a bombshell interview that shocked the world. Again and again, Meghan has shown she will fight back when cornered. So why not this time? Could it be because this is the one battle she cannot win with words? Think about it. If Meghan speaks and denies the rumors, the world will demand proof. Proof she may not be able or willing to provide. Medical records, witnesses, transparency she has spent years avoiding. But if she admits the truth, the consequences are catastrophic. Her children's legitimacy in the line of succession destroyed. Her image as the glowing royal mother shattered. Her entire brand, built on motherhood, family, and resilience, collapsing in a single confession. So she stays silent. Because silence, while dangerous, is safer than either truth or lie. But here's where the silence begins to feel sinister. Meghan has built her public image on motherhood. From cradling her bump in front of cameras to weaving her children into every interview and media project, she has used the image of being a mother as her shield, her weapon, her narrative anchor. And yet, when that very motherhood is questioned, she offers nothing. Doesn't that contradiction strike you as chilling? It's as though she wants the benefits of motherhood's image, without the accountability of its truth. Now let's add another layer. Meghan's background in Hollywood. She knows the power of performance, of image, of illusion. She knows that what the public sees often matters more than what is real. Did she approach her pregnancies the same way? Did she believe the image of carrying a child was more important than the act itself? And if so, what does that say about her motives, her values, her willingness to manipulate perception for power? But perhaps the most important question isn't why Meghan stays silent, but what her silence costs. Because every day she refuses to speak, the storm grows. Every day she refuses to address the whispers. The internet digs deeper, the critics shout louder, the monarchy's legitimacy weakens further. And in that silence, the burden shifts. It's not Meghan who suffers most. It's Archie and Lilibet, two children growing up under shadows, their identities debated, their futures uncertain. Meghan's silence may protect herself, but it condemns her children to a lifetime of speculation. And here's the irony. Meghan has accused the monarchy of being cruel, rigid, and outdated. She claims she left to protect her children from the harshness of royal life. And yet, by staying silent, she may be subjecting them to a cruelty far worse, the cruelty of doubt. The cruelty of being forever questioned, never fully accepted, never free from the suspicion that they don't belong. So what is Meghan's endgame? Is she waiting for the storm to pass? Is she banking on the public's short memory, hoping that in time people will forget? Or is she preparing something bigger, a carefully controlled revelation, a moment where she turns silence into spectacle, confession into profit? Because let's not ignore the possibility that Meghan's silence isn't weakness at all, but calculation. She may know that the truth, however explosive, is also her greatest bargaining chip. A truth that, if revealed on her own terms, in her own way, could give her control over the narrative once again. Imagine it. A documentary, a memoir, a tell-all confession where she finally sets the record straight. It would dominate headlines, command sympathy, and allow her to play victim and survivor in the same breath. The silence now could simply be the build-up to the biggest revelation of all. But until that day comes, silence rules. And the longer it continues, the more dangerous it becomes. Because silence doesn't just raise questions, it forces others to answer them. The public, the press, the monarchy itself. And eventually, someone will fill the vacuum Meghan has left behind. The only question is, who will it be? Because the moment Meghan refuses to speak, someone else's voice becomes louder. And that voice, as we've already seen with Lady C, is not always kind. And the longer Meghan stays silent, the greater the risk that silence will not protect her at all. It will destroy her. But silence is not just Meghan's strategy. It is also the monarchy's. And when silence meets silence, what fills the gap is chaos. And chaos, once unleashed, is almost impossible to control. Why does the media seem split right down the middle when it comes to Meghan and Harry, protecting them with velvet gloves on one side, and tearing them apart with sharpened claws on the other? That divide is not accidental. It is deliberate, and it reveals something bigger than just celebrity drama. It shows us how power, image, and influence are being fought over in the court of public opinion. The media war around Harry and Meghan's children has become just as significant as the succession itself. Let's start with the protective press. These are the outlets, often American, often entertainment-focused, that treat Meghan as a victim, a survivor, a woman who married into a cruel, outdated institution and paid the price. To these outlets, any whisper about surrogacy is labeled as conspiracy, cruelty, even racism. They defend Meghan fiercely, dismissing all criticism as hate, portraying her as the modern Diana silenced by a heartless crown. But here's the contradiction. These same outlets thrive on drama. They may defend Meghan, but they also know that her name sells. They splash her across headlines, dissect every outfit, every gesture, every move. They claim to protect her from cruelty, while simultaneously feeding the public's obsession with her. Do you see the irony? In protecting Meghan, they exploit her. Now shift to the British tabloids, a world Meghan knows all too well. These papers don't hold back. They mock her, attack her, and amplify every rumor. To them, Meghan is not Diana reborn. She is Wallis Simpson 2.0, the American who came in and nearly destroyed the monarchy. For them, the surrogacy rumors are irresistible, because they strike at the monarchy's very foundation. They don't always state them outright, but they fan the flames, allowing speculation to swirl unchecked. And in between these two extremes, the more serious media tries to navigate the storm. Mainstream broadcasters, royal correspondents, and global outlets tiptoe around the subject. They don't want to seem cruel. They don't want to appear racist. But they also cannot ignore the growing noise. And so, they report with careful wording, cautious phrases, and endless references to rumors and allegations. They don't touch the fire directly, but they don't extinguish it either. So the question is, why the divide? Part of it is cultural. American media thrives on celebrity, on individual stories, on sympathy. Meghan and Harry, living in California, have become celebrities more than royals. In America, that makes them relatable. They are seen as victims of British cruelty, symbols of breaking free from an old, irrelevant system. In Britain, however, the monarchy is not just celebrity, it is identity. It is national stability. To attack the monarchy is to attack the nation itself. And Meghan, fairly or unfairly, is seen as the enemy within. But another part of the divide is strategy. Meghan and Harry have courted American media relentlessly. They have given exclusive interviews, signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify, and cultivated relationships with sympathetic journalists. They have built their brand on being wronged, and the American media has embraced that narrative. The British press, on the other hand, has been systematically shut out. No access, no favors, no interviews. And the result is obvious: hostility. But another part of the divide is strategy. Meghan and Harry have courted American media relentlessly. They have given exclusive interviews, signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify, and cultivated relationships with sympathetic journalists. They have built their brand on being wronged, and the American media has embraced that narrative. The British press, on the other hand, has been systematically shut out. No access, no favors, no interviews. And the result is obvious: hostility. Now let's consider the role of social media. Platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube have become battlegrounds for Meghan and Harry's image. Every rumor, every photo, every soundbite is dissected, analyzed, mocked, or defended. Hashtags trend worldwide. Conspiracy videos rack up millions of views. Memes spread faster than official statements ever could. And the result? A global conversation where truth and lies blur together until no one can tell them apart. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because once the media is divided, the public is divided too. Some people believe Meghan is a victim of racism, misogyny, and cruelty. Others believe she is a manipulator, a liar, even a fraud. And Archie and Lilibet, two innocent children, are caught in the crossfire. Their identities debated not just in newspapers, but in tweets, TikToks, and YouTube exposés watched by millions. So let's ask the painful question: is this media war really about Harry and Meghan? Or is it about the monarchy itself? Because every time the press divides over Meghan, they are really dividing over the crown. Should the monarchy modernize, adapt, bend the rules to survive? Or should it hold fast, enforce tradition, and reject outsiders who refuse to play by centuries-old laws? Meghan has become the lightning rod, but the storm is about something bigger: whether the monarchy itself deserves to survive in the modern age. And make no mistake, both sides know this. That's why the American press protects Meghan, because in their eyes, she exposes the monarchy's flaws. And that's why the British tabloids attack her, because in their eyes, she threatens the monarchy's survival. But here's the contradiction neither side can escape. The more Meghan is defended, the more she is scrutinized. The more she is attacked, the more sympathy she gains. Every headline, every segment, every trending hashtag feeds the very fire both sides claim to control. And in the middle of this war sits Lady C's bombshell. Her claims about documents, surrogacy, and succession are not just gossip. They are dynamite dropped into an already raging fire. The American press dismisses her as outrageous. The British press salivates at her words. And the global media machine spins even faster, each outlet twisting the story to fit its own agenda. So what happens next? At some point, the palace will no longer be able to rely on silence. The noise is too loud, the divide too deep. And when the media war collides with the law, when rumors meet royal rules, King Charles will be forced to respond. Because if he doesn't, the monarchy risks losing the one thing it cannot survive without: trust. And that's where the story takes its sharpest turn. Because the next chapter isn't about rumors. It isn't about the press. It's about cold, hard law. And the law does not bend for PR. When is a child truly royal? And when are they not? That's the question echoing through the corridors of power, a question as old as monarchy itself, but now pressed into the modern spotlight by whispers of surrogacy and succession. And the answer doesn't come from opinion polls, glossy magazine spreads, or Netflix documentaries. It comes from something colder, harder, and far less forgiving: the law. Succession law has always been the backbone of the monarchy. Strip away the pomp and ceremony, and what you have left is a legal framework designed to ensure the crown passes from one head to the next without dispute. But what happens when that framework collides with modern realities like surrogacy? What happens when ancient rules meet 21st century scandals? Let's begin with the basics. The Act of Settlement of 1701, the cornerstone of British succession law, made it clear: the line of succession must follow legitimate heirs. Legitimate, in this context, means born to parents who are lawfully married. At first glance, that sounds simple enough. Harry and Meghan are legally married. Therefore, their children should be legitimate heirs, right? But here's where the phrase, born of the body, complicates everything. For centuries, it wasn't enough to simply be acknowledged as a royal child. The child had to be born of the mother's body, the queen or princess consort herself. This wasn't just tradition. It was a safeguard against fraud, against imposters, against the possibility of another family sneaking their child into the royal bloodline under the guise of legitimacy. It was proof that the bloodline was unbroken, direct, and indisputable. Now think about what surrogacy means in that context. By definition, surrogacy involves another woman carrying the child. Even if the child is genetically linked to Harry and Meghan, using Meghan's eggs and Harry's sperm, the child would not be born of Meghan's body. According to the strictest interpretation of succession law, that could disqualify Archie and Lilibet from inheriting their places in the line. Does that sound harsh? Of course. Outdated? Definitely. But monarchy isn't built on compassion. It's built on precedent, tradition, and a rigid structure designed to resist change. And here's the contradiction that slices to the bone. The monarchy wants to appear modern, progressive, and relevant. It wants to survive in a world where equality, inclusion, and acceptance are the values people fight for. Yet, its very foundation is a system that excludes, discriminates, and clings to archaic rules. And nowhere is that contradiction clearer than in the question of Harry and Meghan's children. So let's ask the brutal question. If proof of surrogacy were revealed tomorrow, what would the monarchy do? Option 1. Enforce the law. Strip Archie and Lilibet of their succession rights, quietly revise the line of heirs, and stand firm on tradition. This would preserve the monarchy's legal foundation, but unleash a firestorm of public outrage. Imagine the headlines. Imagine the accusations of cruelty, racism, and discrimination. The monarchy, already fragile in the eyes of many, could lose what little credibility it still has among younger generations. Option 2. Bend the law. Allow the children to remain in the line of succession despite the breach of tradition. This would protect the family unit, silence accusations of cruelty, and present a modern face to the world. But it would also destroy the monarchy's legitimacy. If the rules can be bent for Harry's children, why can't they be bent for anyone else? Where does the line end? What, then, does monarchy even mean? Either way, the monarchy loses. And this is where the law becomes not just a technicality, but a weapon. Because the very existence of these rules gives Lady C's claims their deadly edge. If surrogacy were not legally significant, her documents would mean little. But because they could legally disqualify Archie and Lilibet, the scandal explodes into a constitutional crisis. Now, let's step back and look at history. This isn't the first time the monarchy has faced questions of legitimacy. Think of the War of the Roses, two rival branches of the royal family, each claiming the throne through disputed lines of succession. Think of King Edward VIII, who abdicated because his choice of wife clashed with the laws and expectations of the crown. Again and again, questions of legitimacy have torn the monarchy apart, and every time, the crown has clung to the rules, even if it meant personal sacrifice. So why would this be different? Charles knows history. He knows that once you let exceptions slide, the monarchy unravels. He knows that once legitimacy is doubted, the crown loses its magic. And so, the law hangs like a sword above Archie and Lilibet's heads. Silent, cold, ready to fall if the truth is ever proven. But here's where it gets even more twisted. The law doesn't just punish the children. It punishes Harry and Meghan too. Because if the palace were ever forced to act, Harry would be branded as the father who allowed his children to be erased from history. Meghan would be branded as the mother who staged pregnancies to deceive the crown. And their carefully crafted image of love and protection would shatter overnight. So ask yourself, is this why Meghan stays silent? Is this why Harry lashes out in interviews but never touches this subject? Is this why the palace hides behind silence, hoping the storm will pass before the law ever has to be enforced? Because once the law enters the conversation, there is no safe escape. And here's the cruel irony. The monarchy is supposed to symbolize stability. It exists to prevent chaos, to provide continuity in times of uncertainty. But in this case, the very rules designed to preserve stability